Welcome to today's lesson on equivalent fractions. Today we're going to discover how you can find an equivalent fraction and how you can simplify fractions into their lowest terms. Let's go ahead and begin. Let's begin by reviewing what an equivalent fraction is. As you can see on the screen, we have a fraction bar that represents a value of 2/3. That means we have 2 out of our 3 pieces shaded in all. So an equivalent fraction is when we change the amount of pieces that we have in the whole. However, we're not changing the value or the amount of what we have. Let me show you. We currently have 3 pieces in all that make up our whole. So each piece is worth 1/3. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change the number of pieces we have in all. So we no longer have thirds, but now we have ninths. Now, I want you to notice that we might have 9 pieces now, but did we color in any extra squares or any extra fractions? No, we didn't. We still have the same value shaded in, we just cut it into different pieces. So we now have 6 pieces shaded in out of 9 in all. So an equivalent fraction tells you that you still have the same value or the same amount of something, you're just changing the number of pieces of it that you have. So 2/3 is an equivalent fraction to 6/9. So how can you find an equivalent fraction using numbers and not diagrams? Well, let's notice that if we multiply our numerator 2 by 3, we get a value of 6. And if we multiply our denominator by the 3, then we get a value of 9. So to find an equivalent fraction, you have to multiply the numerator and the denominator by the same number. So let's go ahead and let's try this for 6/9. We're going to multiply 6 times 2 and 9 times 2 to find an equivalent fraction. 6 times 2 equals 12, 9 times 2 equals 18. So 12/18 is an equivalent fraction for 6/9 and for 2/3. So now that we've discussed how to find an equivalent fraction, do you know how to take an equivalent fraction and then simplify it? Let's go ahead and let's work through it. We have 35/50ths. And I want to simplify this into the lowest terms, which means you cannot break it down any further. So in order to do this, we need to find the greatest common factor for 35 and 50. So what we're going to do, we're going to list 35 and 50, and we're going to list all of their factors. Now you want to make sure that you do them in order from least to greatest. So we know we can multiply 1 times 35. We can't multiply anything by 2 or 3 or 4. So then we move on to 5. We can multiply 5 times 7. Now there aren't any other numbers that we can multiply together to equal 35. So we've now listed our factors. Let's go ahead and list our factors for the number 50. We can multiply 1 times 50. We can multiply 2 times 25. We can't multiply anything by 3 or 4, but we can multiply 5 times 10. We can't multiply anything by 6, 7, 8, or 9, so we've now listed all of our factors. So our last step is finding the greatest common factor, the largest number that they both share. So 35 is not a common factor, 7 is not a common factor, 10 is not a common factor. However, 5 is. 5 is the largest number that they both share. So when we're simplifying 35/50ths, we're going to divide our numerator and our denominator by 5 instead of multiplying. 35 divided by 5 equals 7, and 50 divided by 5 equals 10. So an equivalent fraction for 35/50ths that's been simplified is 7/10. Let's go through some practice problems together. Can you tell me if 18/20ths is equivalent to 6/10? Well, let's see. If we divide 18 by 3, that gives us a value of 6. But if we divide our numerator by 3, we have to divide our denominator by 3 as well. And 20 divided by 3 will not equal a whole number, which means that 18/20ths is not equivalent to 6/10. Let's go ahead and try another one. Is 14 18ths, equivalent to 7/9. Well, let's walk through it. We know that if we divide 14 by 2, we get a value of 7. And if we divide our numerator by 2, we have to divide our denominator by 2 as well. And 18 divided by 2 equals 9. So 14/18 is equivalent to 7/9. All right, let's keep on going. Can you tell me if 4/7 is equivalent to 8/14? Well, in this case, we're not going to be simplifying. So we need to multiply 4 times 2 to equal 8. And if we multiply our numerator, we have to multiply our denominator by 2 as well. And 7 times 2 equals 14. There we go. Great work. Last problem. Can you tell me if 3/4 is equivalent to 9/20? Well, let's see. If we multiply 3 times 3, we get a value of 9. And if we multiply our numerator by 3, we have to multiply our denominator by 3. 4 times 3 equals 12, which means that these two numbers are not equivalent. We can actually take these problems one step further by simplifying our answers. So let's look at 6/10. If we're to divide our numerator and our denominator by 2, then we can simplify this problem to 3/5. Now, since 7 and 9 are both prime numbers, we can't simplify this any further, so let's go ahead to 8/14. If we divide 8/14 by 2, so divide your numerator and denominator by 2, then that simplifies this to 4/7. And finally, there isn't a number that we can divide 9 and 20 by that will give us a whole number, so this has already been simplified for us. Let's review what you've learned in today's lesson. When you're trying to find an equivalent fraction, you need to multiply your numerator and your denominator by the same number, and that will give you an equivalent fraction. So 2 times 3 equals 6, and 6 times 3 equals 18. If you are trying to simplify a fraction into its lowest terms, you're going to divide your numerator and your denominator by its greatest common factor, and that will give you your fraction in simplest terms.